Hi everybody, it's Mike Dixon, creator of Open Your Story Like a New York Times bestselling author. This course is designed for you to learn what elements best-selling authors worldwide include in the opening of their stories that differentiate them as published authors from the beginner and the immediate writer. Once learned and mastered, including these elements in the opening of your story not only hook more readers, but serve as proof to literary agents and publishers that you're serious about your career as a writer and that you know what it takes to hook and gain a sustainable readership. I'm excited you've taken this step, so let's not waste any time and get started. Readers are intelligent and not easily won over with a so-so novel. Read reviews on Amazon and see how dedicated readers break down a novel. They're almost as good as the authors themselves. Readers know what should be included in a novel and what shouldn't. How many people do you suspect check reviews on Amazon before purchasing a book or any other product? Thousands. And how likely are you to purchase a book if it gets poor reviews? Not likely. As an author, you can cut the bad reviews drastically by taking your time and making your novel or short story the best it can be. Of course, that includes writing well, but even a well-written book is destined for mediocrity at best if the author didn't spend time structuring their story. This 5-part mini-course is designed to bring to the forefront elements that make up an irresistible opening chapter for your novel or short story. If you master and apply these concepts, you'll greatly increase your chances of having and keeping a reader interested from the moment they pull your book off the shelf. So where do you start? You've heard it many times before, but it's worth repeating. The opening chapter of your novel needs to be flawless. The good news is there are steps you can take to keep the reader turning pages. And guess what? It begins with creating an irresistible hook. The irresistible hook is basically a question. It's a question that readers ask themselves about your story while they're reading the beginning of your novel. It's the "what's going to happen next?" question that propels a reader forward, hooking them into your story. The hook doesn't have to be one specific question. It can be a series of smaller questions and answers that keep the reader excited to learn more about a particular situation. In the case of a mystery, the initial question could be about the murderer who is stalking his prey from the first page. It could be about the unsuspecting victim. It could be about the forest-filled night setting that says, "I know something bad is going to happen, but what?" There are literally hundreds of thousands of examples to a great hook to keep a reader reading. So how do you pull it off? How do you get the readers to ask themselves the "what's going to happen" question to begin with? You'll be happy to know that creating the question for your reader isn't as difficult as you might have expected. Over the years, authors have learned a great opening hook needs to consist of certain traits that must be included in every beginning to ensure your reader stays put. First and foremost, the beginning of your story needs to present the reader with the following 5 elements, preferably on the first page: setting, character, conflict, action, and tone. We're going to drill down to each one of these elements over the next several videos. But for now, I'm going to introduce you to each element at a high level. Number 1, setting. Your reader needs to know where the heck this story is going to take them. Are they on a different planet, or a forest, or downtown Detroit? You have to show them. Make them feel like they're following a murderer walk through the woods with a moist leaf slapping at his face if that's where your story takes place. Movies have a great history of establishing setting before word is even uttered. Hundreds of movies begin with a wide-angle shot of a city or a neighborhood or a downtown setting, or even a mountain from a high view in the sky while the camera lens focuses down to just one house or a building or a campsite perched on a mountainside. So keep that in mind and establish setting. The second description you must include at the beginning of your story is character. It seems like a no-brainer, but whether it's human, an animal, or a mysterious creature, you have to open with a character. And if you can do it in the first sentence, that's even better, because in the end, plot alone is not what connects a reader to a story. It's character. Number 3 is conflict. Having characters sitting around a table discussing the weather on page 1 will get even the most basic reader to close the book or press back on their browser if they're reading a sample of your novel online. Without conflict from the very beginning, you've got nothing. Your story is kaput and the reader's lost. So remember, always open with conflict. The fourth aspect you need in beginning of your story is action. This doesn't have to be a murderer heaving an axe above his victim or, a huge landslide coming down on unsuspecting vacationers. But it does mean motion. The reader needs to feel they just stepped onto a roller coaster that is, about to eclipse the peak of the highest point moments from embarking on some exciting ride. Whatever action you include, the trick is to keep your character moving right from the start. Whether it's walking through the woods or walking out a door in a hurry just to keep them moving. You have to keep moving. And the final element to include at the beginning of your story is tone. Chances are your reader already knows if your book is a romance, mystery, young adult, or a thriller. But setting the tone to that story is key from the very beginning. Tone is the attitude you show towards the characters in the novel and reader. For example, Holden Caulfield in J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye is sarcastic, tough, and inquisitive from the start. Salinger wastes no time in giving the reader a feel for Caulfield and sets the tone with his characteristics. So we've covered at a high level the 5 elements New York Times best-selling authors include in the opening of their stories. As I mentioned before, there's much more to those elements than what I discussed. So over the next few videos, we'll really get into each element so you're comfortable of what and how you need to include those elements to give you the very best chance of keeping and gaining a strong readership and having a chance of landing a literary agent. But before I close out this video, there are 2 more things I want you to keep in mind. Number 1 is begin at the beginning. This simply means start with the elements we discussed and nothing more. Backstory is not, I repeat, not something you put in the beginning of your story. The reader couldn't care less that your initial character is a highly regarded stock trader or a housewife or whatever they are. The reader they're searching for something to latch onto. Setting, character, conflict, action, and tone accomplishes that goal. And number 2, finally, everything I've shown you so far can be wrapped up with one word, and that's promise. What you establish in the beginning of your story is a promise to your reader. You've given them a taste that has hopefully asked and answered several questions that leaves them wanting more. You've promised them the beginning of your story is the top of the iceberg with more great setting, character, conflict, action, and similar tone to come. So that concludes our first introductory video of Open Your Story Like a New York Times Best-Selling Author. Get your notepad ready. In the following video, we're going to tackle the what, how, and why of character. We'll see you there. How many takes was that? Was that like 2 takes? 27? Close enough.